The stars were too quiet. Captain Jake Morrison had traveled through space for 15 years, and he knew the sounds of a living galaxy. Radio signals bouncing between worlds, ships calling out their positions, planets broadcasting their news, and music into the void. But for the past 6 months, sector after sector had gone silent. Jake stood on the bridge of the human ship, U.S. Defiant, staring at the main screen. His crew of 32 humans had been exploring the outer rim when the silence started. First, it was just a few systems going dark, then dozens. Now, entire regions of space that once buzzed with life had become as quiet as empty tombs. "Captain, we're getting something," said Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez from his position at the communications. Station Ben was young, maybe 25, with quick hands and an ear for picking up the faintest signals. "It's weak, but it's definitely a distress call." Jake walked over to look at Ben's screen. The signal was coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 3 days away at full speed. "What kind of signal?" "Old-fashioned radio wave, sir." "Very basic. Whoever sent this doesn't have much power left." Dr. Lisa Chen looked up from her science station. She was the ship's expert on alien life and languages. A quiet woman in her 30s who could speak 12 different alien tongues. "The Kepler system had a big civilization last time we checked. The Altarians. 4 billion people spread across 3 planets." Jake frowned. The Altarians were peaceful folks, tall and blue-skinned, with eyes that looked like crystal. They had been trading with humans for about 10 years, selling their beautiful artwork and buying human food. They were not the type to send desperate radio calls into space. "Set course for Kepler 442, Jake ordered. Maximum speed." The trip took 3 days and 2 hours. When they arrived, Jake's heart sank. The system looked wrong. There were no ships moving between the planets, no communication signals, no signs of the busy civilization that should have been there. "Captain," Ben said, his voice tight with worry. "I'm picking up life signs on the second planet, but they're all underground. Deep underground." Jake ordered the ship to orbit the planet. Through the viewing screen, he could see the remains of great cities. But they looked empty, like everyone had just walked away and left them to fall apart. "There," Dr. Chen pointed to a mountain range on the northern continent. "I'm seeing power readings from inside those mountains. Someone's definitely alive down there." Jake made his decision. Prepare a landing party. Chen, Rodriguez, and 4 security guards. We're going down to find out what happened here. The shuttle landed near a cave entrance built into the mountainside. As they walked toward it, Jake noticed how quiet everything was. No birds, no insects, no sounds of life at all. It felt like walking through a graveyard. The cave led to a metal door that looked hastily built. Jake knocked on it, then stepped back and waited. After a few minutes, the door opened just a crack. A blue face peered out, and Jake recognized it as Altarian. "Humans?" the Altarian said in broken English. You came? "How did you find us?" "We got your distress signal," Jake said. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical help?" The Altarian's crystal eyes filled with tears. The door opened wider, and Jake saw that the alien was thin, too thin, like he hadn't eaten well in months. "I am Keth Moore," the Altarian said. "Come inside quickly. They might see you." Jake and his team followed Keth Moore through a tunnel carved into the rock. The walls were lined with cables and pipes that hummed with electricity. After walking for 10 minutes, they entered a huge underground chamber filled with hundreds of Altarians. The sight shocked Jake. These aliens had once been proud and tall, but now they looked scared and hungry. They lived in small shelters made from scrap metal and cloth. Children clung to their parents, too frightened to play. "What happened here?" Dr. Chen asked softly. Keth Moore led them to a quieter area of the cave. His hands shook as he activated a small translation device, one that looked like it had been repaired many times. "The silent death came," he said, 2 years ago. "One day all our communication stopped working. Every signal, every message, every call between our worlds just ... ended." Jake felt cold fingers run down his spine. All of them. "Yes. Our ships in space lost contact with home. Our colonies couldn't talk to each other. Within days, panic started. Within weeks, our government fell apart. People fought over food, over fuel, over anything they could find. Ben asked, "But who did this to you?" Kethmore's crystal eyes went dark with fear. They called themselves the Zephyrian hegemony. 7 alien species working together. But they don't destroy worlds with bombs or lasers. They use something much worse. What? Jake asked. Silence. They cut off all communication between worlds. They let fear and panic do the work for them. After a few months, when a civilization is broken and desperate, they arrive. They offer to help in exchange for total surrender. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Have they been here? The Zephyrians. 3 months ago, they came with a small fleet and found us already defeated. We surrendered without a fight. Now they take our resources, our food, our people. They said we were lucky they let any of us live at all. Jake clenched his fists. How many other worlds have they done this to? All of them, as far as we know. 30 years of conquest without firing a single shot. They just make everyone afraid and alone, then take whatever they want. Dr. Chen was taking notes on her tablet. Kethmore, how do they block communications? What kind of technology? We don't know. Our scientists tried everything, but nothing worked. It's like they can just turn off all the signals in space. Jake stood up and walked to the edge of the chamber. Looking out at the hundreds of scared aliens, he felt something burning in his chest. Anger. These people had done nothing wrong. They were artists and farmers and teachers, not soldiers. And someone had destroyed their entire civilization just to steal from them. He turned back to Kethmore. Are there other survivors? On other worlds? We think so. Sometimes we get weak. Signals from other underground groups like ours. But we can never talk long before the signals die again. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his communication device and activated it. Captain, what are you doing? Ben asked. Something stupid and dangerous, Jake said. He set the device to broadcast on every frequency. It could reach. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship UAS Defiant. I'm broadcasting to all human colonies, all human ships, and anyone else who can hear this message. Ben's eyes went wide. Sir, if the Zephyrians detect this, it's good. Let them. Jake spoke clearly into the device. The galaxy is under attack by something called the Zephyrian hegemony. They're using communication jammers to cut off entire civilizations, then conquering them when they're too broken to fight. I'm uploading all the data we've gathered to every human facility that can receive it. Share this information with everyone you can. Dr. Chen was smiling now. She understood what Jake was doing. If any Zephyrians are listening to this, Jake continued, here's a message for you. Humans don't break that easily. We've been alone before. We've been scared before. We've been hungry and desperate and cut off from home before. It made us stronger, not weaker. Jake turned off the device. In the silence that followed, he could hear his own heartbeat. Captain Ben said quietly, they're going to come for us now. I know. Jake looked around at the Altarians, who were staring at him with something that looked like hope for the first time in 2 years. But maybe it's time someone reminded the galaxy how to fight back. Far away in space, automatic systems detected Jake's message and began tracking its source. For the first time in 30 years, someone had dared to speak when the Zephyrian hegemony commanded silence. The hunt was about to begin. The message traveled fast. Within hours of Captain Jake Morrison's broadcast, human colonies across 3 star systems were buzzing with activity. The information spread from ship to ship, station to station, world to world. For the first time in months, humans who had been cut off from each other were talking again. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her command chair at Earth Defense Headquarters, reading the reports that flooded in. Kate was 52 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 30 years climbing through the ranks of Earth's military, and she had never seen anything like this. Admiral, said her aide, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker. Ryan was tall and lean, with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years in special operations. We're getting confirmation from 17 different colonies. They've all been experiencing communication blackouts for weeks, some for months. Kate studied the star map on her main screen. Red dots marked the areas where human settlements had gone silent. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "They're isolating us, piece by piece," she said. "Just like they did to the other species." "Yes, ma'am. But there's something else." Ryan pulled up another display. The colonies that were cut off, they didn't collapse like the aliens did. New Montana actually increased their population by 15%. The mining stations around Proxima built to new facilities. Kate raised an eyebrow. "They grew stronger while isolated." "It appears so, Admiral." "Humans seem to handle being alone differently than other species." Before Kate could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. Communications officer called out from across the room. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's them, the Zephyrians." The main screen flickered, then showed the face of an alien unlike anything Kate had ever seen. It was tall and pale, with too many joints in its arms and eyes that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. When it spoke, its voice was translated by computer into cold, mechanical English. "I am Krexfar of the Zephyrian hegemony. Yo will surrender within 72 hours. Resistance will result in the complete isolation of your species. You have seen what happens to civilizations that defy us. Submit now, and your deaths will be quick." The transmission ended. The command center was silent for a moment, then Kate stood up. "Open a channel to all human forces, all colonies, all ships," she ordered. "I want everyone to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Kate looked directly into the camera. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of Earth Defense Command. We just received a surrender demand from the aliens who have been cutting us off from each other. They gave us 72 hours to give up." She paused. "Letting that sink in, here's my response. We've been alone before. It didn't break us then, and it won't break us now. Every human colony, every station, every ship, you are ordered to prepare for war. These aliens think silence makes us weak. Let's show them how wrong they are." Kate turned to Ryan. "Get me Captain Morrison on secure channel." Minutes later, Jake's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired but determined. Behind him, she could see Altarians working alongside his crew. "Admiral," Jake said, "I'm sorry if my broadcast caused problems, but ... Don't apologize, Captain. You did exactly the right thing. How many survivors have you found?" "About 800 on this world. Dr. Chen thinks there might be thousands, or scattered across other planets in this system. They're all hiding underground." Kate nodded. "Sending you reinforcements and supplies. But first, I need you." "To do something dangerous?" Jake smiled grimly. "I'm listening. The Zephyrians have to have some kind of base or command ship in that system. Find it. We need to know how their communication blocking technology works." "Already working on it." "Admiral, we've identified 3 large ships in orbit around the gas giant. Dr. Chen thinks one of them might be their control center." Kate felt a spark of hope. "Can you get close enough to scan them?" "Better than that. Lieutenant Commander Parker has experience with stealth operations. I'm requesting permission to attempt a boarding." Kate looked at Ryan, who had been listening. "To the conversation?" He nodded once. "Permission granted. But be careful, Captain. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The connection ended, and Kate turned her attention back to the war preparations. Reports were coming in from across human space. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake. They had threatened humanity, openly instead of just cutting them off quietly. Human colonies that had been struggling alone for months suddenly remembered they were part of something bigger. Mining stations began converting their equipment into weapons. Cargo ships started carrying soldiers instead of supplies. Even civilian vessels were volunteering for military duty. 3 days later, Jake Morrison crept through the corridors of a Zephyrian command ship. He wore a stolen alien uniform and carried weapons that Dr. Chen had modified from captured equipment. The ship was huge, with corridors wide enough for 3 humans to walk side by side. Jake had never seen anything like the alien technology around him. The walls seemed to pulse with their own light, and the air tasted strange, like metal and electricity. But what struck him most was how quiet everything was. The aliens moved through their ship like ghosts, barely making any sound. He found what he was looking for in a chamber deep inside the ship. Banks of equipment lined the walls, all focused on a central device that hummed with power. Jake didn't understand the alien writing on the controls, but he didn't need to. Dr. Chen had given him a small device of human design, a computer. Virus wrapped in alien-looking code. As Jake worked to connect the device to the alien system, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see a Zephyrian guard entering the chamber. The alien was even more frightening up close, with skin that seemed to shift color and hands that ended in sharp claws. The guard made a sound that might have been surprise, then reached for a weapon. Jake moved faster. Years of training kicked in, and before the alien could draw its gun, Jake had tackled it to the ground. The fight was brief and brutal. The alien was stronger than Jake expected, but it fought like someone who had never been in a real battle. Its movements were too careful, too calculated. Jake fought like someone who had grown up on a world where everything was trying to kill him. When it was over, Jake activated Dr. Chun's virus and plugged it into the central control system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then lights began blinking. Faster, all across the chamber. Jake's radio crackled to life. "Captain Morrison, this is the Defiant. Are you there?" Jake grinned. The virus had worked. "I'm here, Ben. Did it work?" "Better than we hoped, sir. The jamming field around this system just collapsed completely. But Captain... we're picking up something else." "What ships, sir?" "Hundreds of them. The Zephyrians are sending their fleet." Jake ran through the alien corridors back to his escape pod. As he flew back to the Defiant, he could see the enemy ships arriving. They were sleek and deadly looking, clearly built for war. But Jake wasn't afraid, because as he watched, human ships began appearing as well. Ships from colonies that had been silent for months, all converging on this system. Admiral Sullivan had kept her word. The virus had done more than just disable the local jammers, had turned them into amplifiers, broadcasting human military frequencies across 3 star systems. For the first time in months, human forces could coordinate with each other, and they were angry. Jake docked with the Defiant just as the first. Shots were fired. Zephyrian fleet expected to find a broken, isolated human ship. Instead, they found 37 human vessels and a growing number of alien survivors eager for revenge. Dr. Chen met Jake at the airlock, her face excited. "Captain, the virus worked perfectly. But I learned something while you were gone. Why? Analyzed the alien technology, and I think I know why they use silence as a weapon. Tell me they're not just conquering other species, Captain. They're feeding on them. Their entire civilization is built around absorbing resources from other worlds. They've never faced anyone who got stronger when cut off from help." Looked out at the battle beginning around them. Human ships were moving in patterns the aliens clearly didn't expect, using tactics that seemed to confuse their orderly formations. "Then it's time they learned something about humans," Jake said. "We don't just survive when we're alone. We hunt." The first major battle between humans and the Zephyrian hegemony had begun, and the aliens were about to discover that some prey was more dangerous than they ever imagined. The battle at Kepler 442 lasted 18 hours and changed everything. When the smoke cleared, 43 Zephyrian ships were destroyed or captured. The humans lost only 6 vessels. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in what the aliens learned about humanity. Colonel Amy Foster watched the recordings of the battle from her command center at Tau Ceti Station. Amy was 41 years old, with red hair and the kind of calm focus that came from growing up on a frontier world where mistakes meant death. She had been preparing for the Zephyrians to arrive at her system next. "Run it again," she told her aide, Lieutenant Jack Turner. Jack was young and eager, fresh from Earth's military academy. He was learning quickly that real war was nothing like what they taught in school. The recording showed something that should have been impossible. Human ships fighting in complete darkness, using the shadows of asteroids and the radiation from the system's star to hide from alien sensors. The Zephyrians had advanced technology, but they fought like they expected their enemies to play by civilized rules. Humans didn't play by anyone's rules, but their own. "Ma'am," said Sergeant Paula Brooks from her monitoring station. Paula was a communications expert who had been tracking alien transmissions for weeks. I'm picking up Zephyrian signals. They're talking about something called Apex Deathworlders. Amy raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I'm not sure, but they seem scared. They keep using words that translate to nightmare and impossible. They've classified humans as something they've never encountered before. Amy studied the tactical displays around her station. The Tau Ceti system had 3 human colonies, 2 mining stations, and about 50,000 people. If the Zephyrians came here expecting easy prey, they were in for a surprise. Jack, I want all lights in the system shut off. Every station, every ship, every colony. Make it as dark as space itself. Jack looked confused. Ma'am, how will we coordinate without visual signals? Amy smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. We won't need them. Humans hunted in the dark for millions of years before we invented lights. Time to remember how. 3 days later, a Zephyrian fleet of 90 ships arrived at Tau Ceti. Their commander, war leader, Vextor, expected to find another broken human colony ready to surrender. Instead, his sensors showed a system that appeared completely dead. Vextor was an experienced commander who had conquered 12 systems for the hegemony. He was tall and thin like all Zephyrians, with pale skin that changed color based on his emotions. Right now it was shifting between blue and purple, showing his confusion. Where are they? He asked his sensor operator. Unknown war leader. All settlements show no power, no movement, no communication signals. It appears they have abandoned their colonies. Vextor studied the tactical display. This didn't match the reports from other systems. Humans were supposed to fight back, not run away. Begin standard occupation protocol. Send scout ships to each planet. The scout ships moved toward the inner planets, their powerful lights cutting through the darkness of space. They never saw the human ships waiting in the shadow of the system's largest asteroid field. Amy Foster watched through her night vision scope as the first alien scout approached her position. The human ships were powered down to minimal levels, running silent and cold. 2 alien sensors? They were just more pieces of space rock. All units. This is Colonel Foster, she whispered into her communicator. Remember, we are the night. We're the shadow between the stars. These aliens have never fought an enemy that learned to hunt in darkness. The first alien ship passed within 1,000 meters of Amy's position. She could see its lights sweeping back and forth, searching for targets that weren't there. Hunter 1. This is Shadow Base, she called softly.
Take the shot.
A human fighter appeared from the asteroid field like a ghost, its engines silent, its weapons already locked onto the alien scout. The Zephyrian ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness for just a moment before fading. Across the system, the same scene played out again and again. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck fast and hard, then vanished back into the shadows. The aliens had superior technology and more ships, but they were fighting blind against an enemy that had made darkness its friend. War leader. Vextor watched his forces disappear one by one and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. His skin had turned deep red, the color of panic. All ships, retreat to Formation Alpha, he ordered. Activate all searchlights. Find them. But the lights only made things worse. The bright beams created more shadows, more places for human ships to hide. And the Zephyrians had made themselves perfect targets. Outlined against the black of space, Captain Jake Morrison arrived with reinforcements just as the aliens began their retreat. His ship, the Defiant, led a small fleet of human vessels and Altarian survivors who had learned to fight alongside their human friends. Colonel Foster, this is Captain Morrison, Jake called over the radio. Looks like you've been having fun without us. Amy's voice came back steady and calm. Just getting warmed up, Captain. Want to help us finish this? The combined human forces moved like a pack of wolves through the darkness. They didn't try to destroy every alien ship. Instead, they focused on capture. Dr. Lisa Chen had learned that live aliens were much more valuable than dead ones. The battle ended when War leader Vextor's command ship found itself surrounded by 12 human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. His communications officer was screaming in panic, his weapons operator was frozen in fear, and his engines were damaged from a hit he never saw coming. "This is Colonel Amy Foster of the Human Defense Forces," came a voice over the alien communication system. "You have 10 seconds to surrender, or we will show you what humans do to predators who threaten our families." Vextor had conquered worlds without losing a single ship. He had broken entire civilizations with fear and isolation. But sitting in the darkness of space, surrounded by enemies he couldn't see until they struck, he understood something that would terrify the entire hegemony. Humans weren't just dangerous, they were the thing that dangerous things feared. He surrendered. Dr. Chen worked for hours, questioning the captured aliens. What she learned changed everything humans thought they knew about the war. The Zephyrians weren't just conquerors, they were parasites in the most literal sense. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice tight with anger as she reviewed her findings. "They can't survive without harvesting biological material from other species. Every world they've conquered, they've slowly been draining the life force from the inhabitants." Jake felt sick. How many people? Billions. Maybe trillions over the past 30 years. Every peaceful surrender was just the beginning of a slow genocide. Jake looked through the window at the captured alien ships. Inside those vessels were beings who had fed on entire civilizations. His anger burned cold and steady, the kind of rage that didn't explode but instead sharpened into something deadly. "Me, Admiral Sullivan," he said. When Kate's face appeared on the screen, Jake didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Admiral, we've learned something important about the enemy. They're not just conquering worlds, they're eating them. Every species they've defeated is being slowly consumed." Kate's expression went hard. "How long do the victims survive?" "Dr. Chen estimates about 10 years from initial conquest to complete population collapse. We found records of 17 different species that used to have billions of people. Now, they're extinct." Kate was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was like ice. "Captain Morrison, you and Colonel Foster have proven something important. These aliens can be beaten. But now I understand this isn't just a war for freedom. No, ma'am, no. It's a war for survival. Not just ours, but for every remaining species in the galaxy." Kate paused, then continued. "I'm authorizing you to share everything we've learned with every human colony, every alien, survivor, everyone who can fight. It's time the galaxy learned what humans do when someone threatens everyone we care about." Jake nodded. "Understood, Admiral? What are our orders?" "Simple, Captain. We hunt them down. All of them. Every ship, every base, every world they control. We don't stop until they're extinct or they surrender completely." Amy Foster, listening to the conversation, spoke up. "Admiral, with respect, these things have been feeding on innocent people for 30 years. I don't think we should offer them the option to surrender." Kate was quiet for another long moment. Finally, she said, "You're right, Colonel. No surrender, no mercy, no quarter. They made this a war of extinction when they decided to feed on entire civilizations. The word spread through human space like wildfire. The aliens weren't just enemies. They were parasites that had consumed trillions of innocent lives. And now, they had threatened humanity. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why the things that evolved there were the most dangerous predators in known space. When someone they cared about was threatened, the galaxy began to wake up. For the first time in 30 years, species that had been isolated and broken started hearing a new sound, the voices of humans. Broadcasting on every frequency they could find, Captain Sophie Hayes stood on the bridge of her ship, the UES Liberty, watching as her mixed crew of humans and aliens worked together. Sophie was 38 years old, with short black hair and the kind of steady nerves that came from years of rescue operations. But this wasn't a rescue mission. This was war. Her crew was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans worked alongside Altarians, whose crystal eyes could see through alien stealth fields. Former prisoners from a dozen different species shared their knowledge of Zephyrian weaknesses. They called themselves the Liberation Fleet, and they were hunting. "Captain," said Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's science officer. Marcus was a thin man with thick glasses who had spent years studying alien technology, receiving signals from the Vega system. "It sounds like survivors," Sophie nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, showing the face of a creature Sophie had never seen before. It looked like a cross between a cat and a bird, with golden fur and bright green eyes. "Please," the alien said in broken English, "help us. The feeders came 6 months ago. They promised peace if we surrendered. Now they take our people every day. Soon there will be none of us left." Sophie felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest. It was the same feeling she got every time they found another species being slowly consumed by the Zephyrians. "This is Captain Sophie Hayes of the Human Liberation Fleet. We're coming to help you. How many of your people are left? Maybe 10,000 on this world. There were 2 million before they came." The alien's voice broke. "They lie. They say they will let us live if we cooperate, but they just take more and more until there is nothing left." Sophie looked at her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Davis. Sam was young but smart, with an eye for finding enemy weaknesses. "How long to reach Vega?" "It's 18 hours at maximum speed, Captain." "Do it, and send word to Admiral Sullivan. Tell her we found another active feeding operation." The Liberty and its escort ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward another system, where aliens were slowly dying while their captors fed on them. But the humans weren't the only ones moving through space. Far away in a massive ship hidden in the darkness between stars, the leaders of the Zephyrian hegemony were meeting in emergency session. War Leader Vextor stood before the Council of Seven, his skin a pale gray color that showed his fear. Around him sat the rulers of the 7 species that made up the hegemony. They were all different shapes and sizes, but they all shared one thing. They had evolved beyond the ability to produce the proteins. They needed to survive, report said. High Counselor McThomas, the leader of the council. McThomas was ancient even by alien standards, kept alive only by the life force he drained from conquered species. "The humans are not like other species," Vextor said. "They do not break when isolated, do not surrender when threatened. They hunt in the darkness like primitive beasts, but they use advanced tactics that our computers cannot predict." Other Counselor, a massive creature covered in spines, leaned forward. "How many ships have we lost?" 137 in the past 2 weeks. But it is not just the losses. It is how they fight. They capture our crews and question them. They learn our weaknesses and share that information with every species we have conquered. High Counselor McThomas was quiet for a long moment. His ancient eyes were filled with something the hegemony had never known: doubt. "What do you recommend, War Leader?" "We should offer them terms. Give them a place in the hegemony as partners, not subjects. No species has ever forced us to negotiate before." The voice came from the back of the chamber. A figure stepped out of the shadows, and Vextor felt his skin go cold. It was Krexvar, the hegemony's chief diplomat and most dangerous member. Krexvar was tall and thin, even by Zephyrian standards, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He had negotiated the surrender of more worlds than any other being in the galaxy. "We will not negotiate with prey," Krexvar said. "These humans are nothing more than animals from a primitive world. If direct assault has failed, we will use other methods." "What do you suggest?" asked McThomas. "Psychology, every species has a breaking point. We will find theirs." Meanwhile, in the Vega system, Sophie Hayes was learning just how far the Zephyrians would go to break their enemies. The planet below had once been beautiful, covered with crystal cities and floating gardens. Now it looked like a wounded animal. Great machines sucked the life from the soil itself, while Zephyrian ships hovered overhead like vultures. "Captain," said Dr. Webb, his voice shaking with rage, "I'm reading the energy signatures from those machines. They're not just taking the people. They're draining the entire ecosystem. The planet will be dead within a year." Sophie gritted her teeth. "How many Zephyrian ships?" 12, including one command vessel. But Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting massive energy readings from the other side of the planet. It looks like they're preparing to jump away. Sophie understood immediately. The aliens weren't planning to fight. They were planning to run, taking as many victims as they could carry. All ships, battle stations, were not letting them escape with those people. The battle over Vega was unlike anything Sophie had experienced. The Zephyrians fought desperately, using the planet's own people as shields. But the human ships were faster and more aggressive, diving through alien formations with the kind of reckless courage that came from righteous anger. Lieutenant Sam Davis coordinated the attack from his position. Captain, the Altarians can see through their stealth fields. If we link our targeting systems to their crystal vision, do it, Sophie ordered. The result was devastating. Human weapons guided by Altarian sight tore through Zephyrian defenses. Like they weren't there. Within an hour, 11 alien ships were destroyed or disabled. But the command ship managed to escape, taking with it 3,000 captured aliens. Sophie stood on the bridge afterward, watching rescue ships land on the planet below. They had saved 7,000 lives, but 3,000 others were gone forever. Captain, said Dr. Webb, we're getting a transmission. It's from the escaped command ship. The main screen showed Krexvar's face. When he spoke, his voice was cold and calculated. Humans of Earth. I am Krexvar, of the Zephyrian hegemony. You've interfered with our operations for the last time. Since you refuse to accept our generous offer of partnership, we will demonstrate the consequences of defying us. The screen changed to show the interior of an alien ship. Thousands of captured beings from dozens of different species were held. In metal cages, Sophie recognized some of them from previous rescue operations. We hold prisoner representatives from every species you have attempted to liberate, Krexvar continued. For every Zephyrian ship you destroy, we will execute 100 prisoners. For every world you attempt to free, we will drain an entire planet of life. Sophie felt ice form in her stomach. The aliens had just turned the war into something much worse. Furthermore, Krexvar said, we invite you to meet us for negotiations at the neutral station Deep Space 7. Come alone, and we may discuss terms that do not involve the death of everyone you claim to care about. The transmission ended. Sophie looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Humans and aliens alike looked stunned by what they had just heard. Captain, said Sam. Quietly, what do we do? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she activated her communicator. This is Captain Sophie Hayes to Admiral Sullivan. Priority 1 message. The enemy wants to negotiate. They're using hostages to force us to the table. Admiral Sullivan's. The voice came back immediately. What's your recommendation, Captain? Sophie looked out at the damaged planet below, then at her mixed crew of humans and aliens who had learned to fight together. We go to the meeting, Admiral, but not to negotiate surrender. What then? To show them what happens when someone threatens our family. The word spread through the Liberation Fleet like wildfire. The Zephyrians wanted a meeting. They thought they could use fear and hostages to break human will. They were about to learn that threatening the innocent didn't make humans more careful, it made them more dangerous. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of every free species in the galaxy. The aliens were about to discover that humans were most terrifying when they had nothing left to lose. Deep Space 7 was a small trading station that had been neutral territory for over a century. Now, it would become the site of the most important meeting in galactic history. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived with a small fleet of human ships. She knew that thousands more were hidden throughout the system. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the main battle group from his ship, the Defiant. Colonel Amy Foster led the stealth forces that the aliens would never see coming. Captain Sophie Hayes coordinated with alien allies who had been waiting 30 years for this moment. The station itself was old and gray, built for function rather than beauty. In its main conference room, representatives of two very different philosophies would meet to decide the future of every living species in the galaxy. Kate walked into the meeting room wearing her dress uniform, her gray hair pulled back and her expression calm. Behind her came Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Chen. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Krexvar waited for them at a long metal table. He was even more frightening in person than on the screen, tall and pale with eyes that seemed to look through everything they saw. Beside him sat two other Zephyrian officials, and a creature Kate didn't recognize. Something with too many arms and skin like wet leather. "Admiral Sullivan," Krexvar said, his voice cold and precise. "How good of you to accept our invitation." Kate sat down across from him without ceremony. "Let's skip the pleasantries. You wanted to talk? Talk." Krexvar smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp and too numerous. "Direct. I appreciate that in prey species." "Very well. The hegemony is prepared to offer humanity a place in our organization. You would have autonomy over your own worlds in exchange for providing military service." "In other words," Jake said, from beside Kate, "you want us to help you hunt other species." Such a crude way to put it. You prefer to think of it as maintaining galactic order. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "By feeding on innocent people. By draining the life from entire worlds." Her expression didn't change. "Every species must eat, Doctor. We have simply evolved beyond the need for crude biological processes. We take what we need from species that are less developed." Kate felt the anger building inside her, but she kept her voice level. "And if we refuse your generous offer, then you will watch as every species you have liberated dies slowly in our feeding chambers. We currently hold 50,000 prisoners from 17 different worlds. Their fate depends entirely on your cooperation." The room was quiet for a moment. Kate could hear the gentle hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sound of ships moving through the docking bays. "I have a counteroffer," Kate said finally. Krexvar raised what might have been an eyebrow. "Oh, surrender unconditionally. Release all prisoners. Withdraw from every world you've conquered. Submit to trials for crimes against every living species in the galaxy." The alien diplomat actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Admiral, you seem to misunderstand your position. We hold all the advantages here. We have hostages. We have superior numbers. We have technology your species cannot hope to match." Mike looked at his watch and smiled. "Actually, you had superior numbers. About 10 minutes ago." Before Krexvar could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and the artificial gravity flickered. For a moment, Kate's communicator crackled to life. "Admiral, this is Colonel Foster. Operation Ghost Hunt is complete. All 7 hegemony core worlds are under simultaneous attack. Their fleets are scattered and burning." Krexvar's skin went from pale gray to bright white, the color of pure panic. "Impossible. Our worlds are defended by thousands of ships." "We're defended," Jake corrected. "Turns out your ships aren't very good at fighting enemies they can't see coming. Humans spent a lot of time learning how to hunt things that were bigger and stronger than we were." Dr. Chen activated a small device on the table, a holographic display showed the current status of the war. Red dots marked Zephyrian positions. Blue dots showed human forces. The red dots were disappearing faster than the aliens could track. "You see," Kate said conversationally, "while you were focused on threatening hostages and demanding meetings, we were doing what humans do best. We were hunting." The display showed battle after battle across dozens of star systems. Human ships appeared from asteroid fields, from the shadows of planets, from the radiation clouds around dying stars. They struck hard and fast, then vanished before the aliens could respond. But it wasn't just humans fighting. The display showed Altarian ships using their crystal vision to guide human weapons. Former prisoners from a dozen species fought alongside their liberators. Even the peaceful species that had surrendered without a fight 30 years ago had found their courage again. "This is impossible," Krexvar said, his voice shaking. "No species has ever coordinated an attack of this magnitude." "No species had to before," Kate replied. "You made it personal when you started eating innocent people. Humans have a saying, do not go gentle into that good night. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We definitely don't let parasites feed on our friends." Captain Sophie Hayes' voice came over the communicator. "Admiral, this is the Liberation Fleet. We've located the prison ships, beginning rescue operations now." On the holographic display, Kate could see dozens of human ships. Converging on the massive Zephyrian vessels that held the hostages, the alien ships tried to flee. They were surrounded by enemies who had been planning this moment for weeks. Krexvar stood up from the table, his movements jerky with panic. "You cannot do this. We are a civilized species. We follow the laws of war." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The laws of war. You've been committing genocide for 30 years. You drain the life from entire species and call it civilization. There are no laws of war that protect monsters." The alien reached for something at his belt, probably a weapon or a communicator. He never made it. Dr. Chen had been watching him carefully, and when he moved, she moved faster. Years of studying dangerous alien life forms had taught her to recognize threats quickly. The struggle was brief. Krexvar was taller and stronger than Dr. Chen, but he had never been in a real fight. She had grown up on a world where everything was trying to kill her. She knew how to end threats permanently. When it was over, Kate looked down at the body of the alien diplomat. "Dr. Chen, was that necessary?" He was reaching for a dead man. "Switch," Dr. Chen said, holding up a small device she had taken from the alien's body. "It's probably connected to bombs on the prison ships. Standard terrorist tactic when negotiations fail." Kate nodded and activated her communicator. "All units. This is Admiral Sullivan. Negotiations are over. Execute Order 87. Across the galaxy, the final phase of humanity's war against the Zephyrian hegemony began. It wasn't a battle, or even a series of battles. It was an extermination. Human forces that had been hiding in the darkness for weeks struck. Simultaneously at every Zephyrian installation in known space. They didn't try to capture territory or demand surrender. They simply eliminated every trace of the parasitic species that had fed on the galaxy for 30 years. The war ended 6 hours later, Captain. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the last Zephyrian ship explode in a ball of fire. Around him, his crew of humans and aliens worked together to coordinate rescue operations across dozens of systems. "Captain," said Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez, "we're getting reports from all sectors. The hegemony is finished. Every core world has been liberated. Every prison ship has been captured. Every feeding facility has been destroyed." Jake nodded. "What about survivors? The prisoners? Over 2 million rescued so far, more being found every hour. Dr. Chen estimates we've saved about 60% of the hegemony's victims." Jake felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Billions of innocent people had died over the past 30 years, and nothing could bring them back. "Sir," Ben said quietly, "there's something else. The rescued species want to form some kind of alliance. They're calling it the Galactic Protection Council. They want humans to lead it." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. "Tell them we'll consider it. But first, we have a lot of rebuilding to do." 6 months later, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the first meeting of the Galactic Protection Council. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Great Hall, all of them free for the first time in a generation. "Zephyrian hegemony is extinct," Kate announced. "Their feeding facilities have been destroyed. Their technology has been analyzed and shared with all member species, and their victims have been freed."
Ow.
The hall erupted in cheers from dozens of different species, each celebrating in their own way. Kate raised her hand for silence. "But we cannot forget what happened here. For 30 years, the galaxy lived in silence and fear because good people did nothing while evil ones acted. We must ensure this never happens again." She looked out at the assembled representatives, humans and aliens working together for the first time in galactic history. This galaxy is now protected by species that know the difference between peace and submission. We choose peace. But we will never again submit to those who would devour the innocent. Kate paused, then spoke the words that would be broadcast across every frequency in known space.